want to welcome members of the press to Anderson Kamela Mazoka House, and to also thank you for turning up in big numbers, as the case may be. Today is slightly a different day on account of the fact that we're going to speak to the media, after which we shall welcome members into the Upnd family. To start with, most of you are aware that on the trajectory of trying to kwenyuna, we have been talking about Copper Belt. The previous last press conferences we had, the first one focused on the water issues on the Copper Belt and the programs that have been undertaken under the able leadership of President Hakainde Hichilema. We later on looked at the roads, township roads, among other issues, and we did promise citizens through you, the media, that we shall be dealing with different areas of consideration by sector. We will be looking at roads, we'll be looking at the health sector, how we have performed in the education sector, what infrastructure we have set up, not only on the Copper Belt, but nationwide. And today, we will first of all try to kwenyuna on the Copper Belt in the mining sector. After we have done that, we can now deal with a few salient issues that form part of the national discourse today. I want to quickly talk about mining on the Copper Belt. You are aware, friends, that this shaft 28 we talk about in Rwansha is one of those mines that were closed many decades ago. There was no hope for Rwansha, and many of us that do understand Rwansha very well, we know that this is a Copper Belt town which is dependent on mining activities. And on the Copper Belt, the moment we close one mine, it means all those companies you see dotted all over Copper Belt, which are also dependent on the mining sector, will collapse. Because the mines recruit workers directly and indirectly. Directly by recruiting them directly, indirectly by allowing contractors to engage in what they refer to as labor hire in some cases, where the contractor will recruit and then the contractor will be given a contract by the government. I wish to mention to you that from the time this particular project was flagged off for dewatering or removing water from down there so that mining activities can commence, as you may be aware that in Zambia, mining is in two categories. We have open pit mine and underground mine. To undertake underground activities, you know that there is a water table. For you to effectively conduct mining activities, you need to pump out water from underground. And they refer to that process as dewatering. This is what's been happening in Rwansha. And already, you have 90 workers at dewatering level. It is envisaged that once this is done and projects begin running, between 3,000 to 3,500 jobs be created. The starting point is to remove water. Secondly, when we add the contractors and suppliers, like I told you that they are indirect jobs, you are basically talking about a quantum of about 5,000 workers. That is in Rwansha. I know that many towns on the Copper Belt are in close proximity, such that opening a mine in one town attracts employment in all the other towns on the Copper Belt. That's why we have people working in Mufurira, but they live in Ndola. You have people working in Kitwe, but they live in Chingola. They may also be living in Chirabombwe, and every day they can be driving for work. That's how Copper Belt is organized. I should further move to another area, which is key for many of our brothers and sisters on the Copper Belt, Mopani. We are aware that Mopani mine sits in Mufurira and Kitwe. Very important for many of you that do not understand the architecture of mining activities there. So, when this mine collapsed in the previous government, it dropped to between 60,000 to 65,000 tons in a year. When this mine is at full capacity, because now it has been reopened. It is expected that we are going to have between 230 to 240,000 metric tons. Now, how did we arrive to where we are? We have managed to identify and find a capable investor, IRH. So far, we can proudly indicate that suppliers and contractors who were owed money in the previous government have been paid. It should also be mentioned that having paid these particular suppliers and contractors, it simply means contractors that have workers have also started paying those workers indirectly as well. In addition, it is not only the suppliers and contractors that were owed money by Mopani. There were also other institutions like the local authorities. As a result of this type of investment, we've been able to get 87 million given to Kitwe Council, which money was used to clear retirees who were owed money, whose future was unknown in terms of payment. I should further mention, friends, that a sum total of about $250 million was made available by this investor to make sure that these creditors, contractors, and suppliers are given their money. So it is expected that once this project reaches at a maximum, we will get more workers. You know that when Mopani was closed, about 10,000 citizens lost their jobs. Remember I told you that production went as low as 60,000 and below per metric tons. So this is one very important project that the UPND government is undertaking. You know that the target for production of copper in Zambia is supposed to be 3 million. So this is a progressive and a successful story for us to tell, because this formed part of the message during the campaigns on the copper belt. When we were campaigning on the copper belt, one of the things we told them was that we were going to run Mopani better by finding a capable investor and ensuring that people begin getting back their work, their jobs. So far, over 1,500 workers have gotten back the jobs at Mopani. I should move to KCM. So for Mopani, Kwenyu, okay? So we move to Kwenyu in Tonga, simply means ticking, okay? In other words, UPND has a checklist of programs in the manifesto, and we are able to list them openly. When we say free education, we tick. Kwenyu. When we say revamping the mining sector, meaning we are ticking on our checklist of promises. When we tell citizens that we shall end thuggery behavior, there will be no citizens moving with unregistered guns, terrorizing fellow citizens. We have addressed that problem, so we can proudly do what? That's what we are saying. So we get to KCM. Friends, you know that this was liquidated. This particular mine died. People lost their jobs. Someone can help us. I think there's a phone that is playing here, so that perhaps it could move from the page, obviously to affect the pickup of other information. So I should further mention that KCM sits on Chingola and Chirilabombwe. These are towns that are about 20-25 kilometers apart, very close to each other. And this is one of the biggest mines that we have in this country. You are aware that, again here, the UPND government, through its cooperating partners, have been able to engage effectively. And as we speak, about $20 million is being made available by KCM under corporate social responsibility. Before we get to taxes, friends, then KCM has also committed to do selected roads in these towns. You are aware, friends, at the same time, that having these selected roads done in these townships reminds us of how the mining sector was running under the UNIP government. because at that time, most of the township roads were maintained by the mining sector. So in addition to CDF, that is providing the much needed support to these particular roads, we have the mining sector that is also helping us. Then we also have one of the main issues that we need to talk about. I'm sure you've heard of the Konkola Deep Project, which is one of the huge projects under the Upnd government. Now, you know that this particular Konkola Deep Project will soon be attracting the head of state this Friday to get on the copper belt to do a groundbreaking ceremony of the establishment of a shaft there. Those that understand mining do well understand that every time you hear that a shaft is being set up, then you know the investor means business, because the shaft enables you to access copper underground. It is the beginning of the road to underground mining, where you find those things rotating, those of you just bypass, which look like a wheel of a bicycle. It is basically a lift taking miners underground or taking them up. Now that is the explanation of the shaft. So when you see those things being done, then you know that we are getting somewhere. The next thing that I want to talk about has to do with the jobs that will come alongside this initiative. It is expected that not less than 5,000 jobs will be created as a result of this initiative. The starting point is that the mining activities have kick-started. KCM has started getting back the workers. $240 million has been made available to pay suppliers and contractors who were owed in the previous government. They were not sure of their future in the mining sector. These companies dotted all over Copper Belt died. They retrenched their workers. Brothers and sisters lost their jobs. As a result of this initiative of revamping the mining sector, it means we can now attract back these suppliers and contractors to get connected again in the mining sector. So, it is a project that we know will take us somewhere. We know that mining does not come without teething problems. And one of the things that government is addressing, for those of you that are following us online from the Copper Belt, is the issue of suppliers, to make sure that the local suppliers are paid at least within 30 days after supplying. That is one of the initiatives that government is undertaking on a very serious note, so that we do not leave payment of these contractors to posterity, as it were. This time as we speak, friends, we are in a state where mining investors are paying suppliers who supplied many years ago, 6 years ago, 7 years ago. We do not want to repeat itself. This is why government is taking initiative to ensure that if it is practicable, suppliers are given their money within 30 days after they have supplied their goods and services. That is the idea. Again on the Copper Belt, Mimbula mine. You know that is stationed within Chingola there. I should further mention that phase 1, which has been complete, has so far allowed 2,600 jobs to be created, and people are working. So we are not talking about promises. We are ticking the things that we have done. Thank you. Now they are doing phase 2. Once phase 2 is done, not less than 1,500 jobs will be created. I'll come back to talk about it here. And remember that our trip to the Copper Belt is pending for next week. So the starting point is that we are going to visit one project in the sequence of our presentation. Then we will go back and visit another project in the same manner that we are talking, so that we can now have a clear view of the workers we are talking about. Yeah. That we do not hang castles in the air. We mean business, no lip service. What we are talking about can be substantiated. And we do not deal with propaganda. As you know those others, we want to be dealing with information that can be verified. So, I should proudly indicate, friends, that this Mimbula mine is also appreciating contractors and suppliers. The next one, Luvambe mine. Luvambe mine is based in Chirilawombwe. You will remember that this is a mine that was mismanaged. We now have a new investor, JCHX, A number of you have read come across that kind of information. It is one of the mines in the country that have very good copper deposits. And it is our considered view that we have again delivered under President HH's leadership. And we know that between 1,500 to 2,000 citizens will get their jobs as a result of revamping Lubambe mine, which has just been taken over by an investor. Now, that is a milestone for us. This is why people are no longer talking about mining. So, if we are going to engage our colleagues in a sensible discourse, we want them to give us alternatives to what we are providing. So, even when they tell the people of the Copper Belt, by the way, when they go to the Copper Belt and tell the people of the Copper Belt that we are coming back, or we want to come, they must think twice. So, once at full production, it is expected that Lubambe mine should give us at least 100,000 metric tons of copper annually. What does this mean? We are trying to get to our envisaged 3 million tons so that we make Zambia a net exporter again. That's where we are getting to. We also have Chivuluma mine, of course, which was closed. We have investors coming in there. So far, not less than 600 citizens have to get jobs at Chivuluma mine. Those are jobs being created. Kwenyu, yes. Other mines, okay? We have one of the best emeralds in the world. Do you know that? We have at Kejam mine, which of course are having a few challenges, but they'll be resolved. Then we have Grizzly mine. Now, this particular Grizzly mine has employed about 3,000 people. These are mines all of us can undertake to visit and prove for ourselves on the jobs being created there. So we are talking about activities that we have done. Okay, you also have Kavula mine, for those of you that have never heard of this mine, in Lufanyama. So far, close to 1,000 people have been recruited in that particular mine. And it is envisaged to be producing about 5,000 metric tons of copper in a year. All these metric tons of copper we are talking about put together should be leading us to 3 million tons. What does that mean to the people of Zambia who are not coming from the copper belt? It means the taxes we are collecting from these mines are in millions. It also means we are going to increase, when government has enough money from the taxes, we shall increase on the women that are accessing social cash transfer. We shall increase on the number of our old men that are accessing social cash transfer. In other words, the number of beneficiaries will go up. Number 3, it means we can now sustain free education. Number 4, it also means, because then you have to ask yourself a question. How is government sustaining salaries of thousands of youths that we are recruiting on an annual basis? It is through such initiatives that the tax base is increasing by having as many investors as possible coming to exploit the untapped mineral resources that we have. We also have in Mpongwe another mine to open in Mpongwe, for your record. We have also Mingomba project. It's a huge project, a cobalt project, which it is expected once done, close to 10,000. It's one of the biggest projects. That's the Mungomba projects. So far, this particular project, right at its inception, has managed to take up 1,000 citizens. These are places along the way, because for us, those are our talking points. We have no time to politic. Our talking points are through actions. We will visit those areas the way we did for Lusaka Ndora Dual Carriage Way. The way we are doing soon with Kariba, we are going there. So we visit the areas, we check what is being done there. That is the message we are taking to the people of Zambia. That is our manifesto to the people of Zambia. We don't want to give more promises when these are things that are being done. So, having done on the mining sector, I want to speak to one very important issue that we cannot ignore. But we are going to give you more details about it as we go. We are also alive to the fact that our chief government spokesperson, who happens to be the party spokesperson as well, Honorable Cornelius Mwetwa, yesterday belabored to deal with a few salient issues that surround the president's working culture, who is relentlessly addressing a number of issues across the country almost on a daily basis. But it is important for us to add our voice on the bill that is forming part of the national discourse. Not so. We have not spoken, apart from the chief government spokesperson yesterday, making reference to it. But I thought it would be expedient for us as well to add a voice to this national debate as a reminder that we have 13 issues in there. Nothing much has been added. The same 13 issues that were initially floated by the Minister of Justice have been now put in this particular bill. I want to call upon citizens, well-meaning citizens, to support the initiative of the Constitution Amendment for the reasons that I'm going to advance as follows. Number one, this particular bill seeks to amend Article 47 to allow for mixed member proportional representation. What is mixed member proportional representation electoral system? It is, friends, a combination of electoral systems. That's why it's called mixed. Okay? Moving towards the same institution, but getting into the institutions differently. Currently, we have been using first past the post to elect members of parliament, using simple majority, meaning even if you beat me by 2 votes at parliamentary level, I'm a member of parliament. That is one method we use to take people into parliament. Number 2, at presidential level, we have 50% plus 1. Now we are going to have an addition, which will be called proportional representation electoral system, which system is also being used in South Africa. What is the implication of this? The implication is that after the elections, ECZ will undertake to ensure that women, youths, and persons living with disabilities are included in the National Assembly. Women, not more than 20. You are seeing it, right? Remember that there are different groups that we are talking about. So a concoction of them are giving us a very good number. On a lighter note, remember that the people that are enacting these laws are all adults. And they know the implication of what they are enacting. Okay? They are basically saying it's either they maintain their seats and allow more youths to come, and some of them should lose some of the seats to the youths and women. That's what they are saying. Meaning there is no selfishness being exercised here. So, mixed member proportional representation is a way of taking people to parliament. Why has it been adopted? It is because we have now looked at various jurisdictions on how do people get to the National Assembly. So those of you that are opposed to this, you should give us another method. So far, countries that are running with such kind of initiative are using this method. How does that happen? Political parties will elect these youths, women, and persons living with disabilities based on the guidelines given to them by the Electoral Commission of Zambia. Okay? They will elect people that are going to sit in the National Assembly. That's what will happen. Which is progressive for us, because then individual political parties will be deciding in terms of ratios based on the total votes and how they have obtained the votes. They will be represented by a percentage. So a percentage determines how many PF sends there, how many UPND sends in terms of youths, how many Socialist Party sends there in terms of percentage, and there will be a threshold. So, the disadvantage of allowing the process to continue, which we have today, is that the article that they want to rely on for a cheap debate, because they are contradicting themselves, they are saying we abandoned Bill 10 because it had women and youth. On the other hand, they are saying the Constitution already has a provision. So what are they talking about? Why did they want to propose to amend if it already had a provision? It's because that particular clause they are referring to has limitations. For example, the KK administration, I want to say this, Kenneth Kaunda administration, friends, over 75% of KK and friends were youths. The idea of putting a clause for nominating members of parliament had nothing to do with women and youths at their time. Because then there was no international convention on gender. So now you understand how nomination came in. It was blind to youths, it was blind to women. It was basically addressing the appointment of ministers outside parliament. Did you get that? We must broaden our debate. It was meant to appoint ministers from outside parliament. At that time, UN conventions were not yet born on gender and inclusion of women, of youth per se. So, I should further indicate that may we support this particular bill because it will also resolve the problems we had during the presidential petition, so that we include the word determination. For those that understand legalese, they do well understand that when you go to court, there are two things that the court does, which litigants seek in the courts of law. That the court may hear, number one. Secondly, that the court may determine. The defect in our constitution was that it was only providing for hearing, not determination. We saw that as a gap. So, thus the support to include determination. The next point, why we should allow for this particular bill to be supported, is the idea of by-elections. For example, if a person resigns deliberately, they must be disqualified. They will not contest again. That's what this bill is saying. Because remember, we reached a stage where there's a by-election, then people will play tricks to just nullify the nominations. They will resign deliberately. So now putting a clause so that people do not abuse the electoral process. It is a progressive clause. We have to stop abusing the electoral process because ECZ then was spending more money to do the same process. Secondly, we are saying if someone dies in this bill and they are candidates, even if the election date was set, in this bill, the elections must be cancelled and the elections be held under fresh nominations within 30 days. Meaning, there is consideration for those who die because no one has control of death. Are we together? Are we together, friends? Yes. Yes. So basically, these are the things that are coming alongside this. Then, where an MP, mayor, council, chairperson, or councillor seat falls vacant, elections must be held within 90 days, as it were.